Welcome to The Learning Curve, your industry podcast on all things on enterprise learning. In this episode of The Learning Curve with me, Kenny, we're once again going back to Singapore, and there we have a very special guest, and that's Assel. She's worked with a lot of big organizations, social impact organizations such as the World Health Organization, British Council, and World Bank, along with some very good work that she did with Microsoft. And Assel has recently founded her own company called EDUTech Future. And with her, we'll be talking about the topic of future skills. So if you're interested in finding out more about what future skills are and what to expect in the future, then listen to the podcast and enjoy. Hi, and welcome to another episode of The Learning Curve with me, Kenny. And today, once again, I have a very, very special guest with me. Once again, an international guest, and that's Assel, currently located in Singapore. And with Assel, we're going to be talking about the topic of future skills. So, Assel, welcome to the podcast. Thanks for being available and having the time. I'm really excited because future skills is something I think that we can all profit from. So whatever information you partake or basically pass on to our listeners in this podcast, I'm sure they'll appreciate it. So again, welcome on board. For you, it's now in the evening. For me, it's daytime since I'm recording the podcast from Germany and you're in Singapore. But like I said, I think it should be really interesting and a little fun. So, Assel, a little to your background. You've worked in an area which you could call social impact consulting, which I actually haven't heard of that term before, actually being in this podcast with you. So what actually is social impact consulting? What is that? Can you give us a little idea on that?
Yeah, thanks, Kenneth. Hi, everybody. Thanks for being part of the podcast. It's my first time doing the podcast. So, to set up the expectation level as well. But I'm equally excited.
It's always way high. It's way high. I think you're doing already a great job. So,
yeah. So, social impact consulting or social impact as a term, right, is something that I call, but I think it's an official term as well, that we call, it's mostly what NGOs, non-profit organizations, and international organizations do. Of course, governments do it as well as part of the obligation to the citizens. But my work was, my early career was connected a lot to international organizations. And the social impact consulting is everything what you consider a social issue, poverty elimination, health, education, better work opportunities. So if you look at the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs, now we talk a lot about climate and another goals. So this is all part of the social impact. So we are impacting the social development.
Okay, so expanding upon that, I guess it's a global thing though, because if I look at your resume here, it only lists WHO, the British, so WHO, World Health Organization, and British Council, World Bank, and UNICEF. So yes, I would definitely say that you've been involved in a lot of international things. So do you have some key moments? And out of that now, you basically, and that's where we're getting to, is the future skills and, of course, the company you founded out of that. So do you have some key moments or experiences that influenced you or influenced your transition into the EdTech industry?
I think the key moments probably come from my childhood. So both my parents are doctors, and on both sides, relatives, half of them are doctors. So I think that kind of influenced me to give back, right? To be part of the community. And this is, I think, a very tough profession where you don't belong to yourself or even to your own family. At least that's how it was when I was growing up. So
Well,
that was
quick
first.
question: were they doctors, like medical doctors,
Medical
or
doctors. Yeah,
okay, okay.
medical doctors. So mom is an eye doctor and dad is a therapist. And
Hmm.
plus my dad was also working in the military hospital. So it was like double stress, I think, in addition to the healthcare,
Okay.
dealing with the military things.
So you're very,
So
at an early age, you're very exposed to all these topics.
yeah, and I think we were
Okay.
growing up also quite independent, me and my sister,
Hmm.
like because my parents are always at work, right?
Hmm.
So we were kind of we were learning very fast, right?
Hmm.
So that's first thing. It's childhood memory, but I think something very recent that shaped my professional start of my professional career and my company, as you mentioned, EDUTech Future. I started my career. My first job was a teacher in the school. I did it while studying for my degree, English language and literature. So this was mandatory. And after that, first year of my career was teaching in the university as a lecturer. So I saw all kinds of problems, in fact. And I was assigned because you can't choose really. I was assigned to a school. Remember it wasn't the rural area; it was still in the city, Almaty, but it's very resource constrained. With school where I was supposed to teach English for one semester, like trimester, and I remember kids were not speaking English at all because we were teaching them English using using Kazakh and Russian languages, and not we, but that's how the practice was. And they were
Hmm.
like some of them were not engaged, some were not didn't care, some of them probably would love it if it was done differently,
Hmm.
and then I was thinking like, it's interesting because it's such an exciting subject, but you could do so much. So that was my first glimpse into education, and more recently education technologies, right? How technology can bring can make education
Hmm.
level playing field. So in
Yep.
that terms, I come in, to edtech from that lens, and I think my work at Microsoft shaped my thinking in terms of education technologies.
Ah, yeah. Okay, that's the other point. We had a transition, so you went a little bit from the social impact area, so the World Health Organization. So, and then you had a stop at Microsoft. So as I see it, we're moving to a definite point. We're refining. So you went from your basis there to Microsoft, and there you were the Asia Pacific Program Manager for Future Ready Skills. So we're already priming you, I guess, at this point. That must have been then the catalyst for you then to um, basically create your own company, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And what specifically at Microsoft do you recall that took you to that last step where you put, I guess, one and one together and made two out of it and said, okay, now it's time for me to go my own way?
Um, first of all, I would just say generally big tech and then Microsoft because simply because I was there.
Hmm.
Um, it's very different. We talk about skills, future ready skills, skills based hiring, skills first. So this it's a very big term, especially now.
Yeah, there's so many
Um,
skills out there. I'm completely confused. I mean, it's like uh, you have. Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of old school, so I have like hard skills and soft skills. I'm back just to two. The ability to do your work, and then all the soft skills related to that. So I'm stuck with two. So
yeah.
um, that's my area. But you mentioned a whole bunch more. So please continue.
And the thing is, we were taught to think in this way. We were primed to think in terms of hard and soft skills.
Hmm.
Although we're living in the world where we cannot differentiate and we cannot
Hmm.
divide and or assignments in excess, you cannot oppose hard skills to soft skills. It's not antonym because
Okay.
you can't
Okay.
do one without the other.
Okay.
Like we're teaching as if hard skills are more important and
Mhm.
they're prime, and therefore soft skills are secondary because they're soft. But this is not true, right? In
Okay.
the current AI driven world, in fact, the so called soft skills, which we now call human centric skills or core skills or human skills, are equally, if not more important, and with every passing day and week and month getting more important than the hard skills. Not saying that we don't need the hard skills, but the soft skills are just becoming more important with the current generative AI development.
Okay, so we're debunking a couple myths here and creating a new understanding of skills, which is really cool. Okay, so so you founded EDUTech relatively recently, so this year, I believe, correct? Okay, so when you created the company, what was your vision and your mission?
Yeah, I thought about it a lot. I didn't want to create another training company or school or provider or vendor, with all the due respect of all the companies that are doing this job, right?
Well,
It's
every
just,
company has a niche, so there's
yeah.
legitimate reason for those companies to be there. And I guess in your case, you want to differentiate yourself from those, so that's perfectly good.
Yeah, exactly. So I try to build a very long-term vision, as long as I could see, and
Okay.
my vision and mission. I'm just saying it out loud. So my vision is to create a world where education is accessible, inclusive, and transformative for everyone. So that's the vision of EDUTech Future. And
Love
I
that.
strongly believe in that, right? It's not just like high words like that are nice to see, nice to write, and nice to hear. I truly believe in every word that I say.
Mhm.
And the mission is, we are EDUTech Future is more than just a company. It is a movement that empowers learners, educators, and change makers to create a better future for themselves and their communities. Again,
Okay,
I
I can
believe.
definitely hear the passion here. 13 minutes into the podcast, I think most people that got this far in the podcast definitely hear your passion for the topic, and that this is not just a short term thing for you. It's like you said, in this case, the vision and mission statement really does hit on the mission. So you really do have a mission here. Okay, so I really like both of those. Those are very, very well thought out. So I like that. So what services do you offer?
Yeah, so our services is structured around three pillars. So the first pillar is designing curriculum that is engaging, that is using gamified learning design and generative AI tools.
What was the
So
second one?
generative AI, Gen AI tools.
Okay.
Yeah. So this is very important because our second pillar is teaching. And usually designing and teaching goes together, but I kind of separate it because I find you cannot teach just content.
Mm-hmm.
Although we used to say content is king, it's not anymore. It's not number
Okay.
one thing that we would teach that will stay in our minds and that we know that we'll learn something from it, right? Just content is too much.
Mm-hmm.
It's everywhere. Have an oversaturated market of content,
Mm-hmm.
right? So it's up to us to figure out which content we we can consume and which content we can actually apply in our real life.
Mm-hmm.
So first is designing the curriculum that's actually helping learners not only to be engaged but to reach their goals. Second is teaching. With teaching, I'm wearing two hats. I design and teach my own programs,
Mm-hmm.
and this will lead us to the third pillar. And I'm also a global training partner for Microsoft and education programs. Basically, anything you see in Microsoft education, like technology certifications on Microsoft Learn, Minecraft education, gamified curriculum for the K-12 students, Imagine Cup Junior, AI for Good competition, and things like that. So, and that leads me to the third pillar. Let me know if I'm too fast.
No. That's just a lot.
And my third pillar that I am very passionate about, that I'm focusing, I think, I don't know, 80% of my time probably now as we speak, is career accelerators, or I call them skills to jobs programs. So these are specifically bridging the gap, and this is the bigger reason why my company was created, to bridge the gap between academic training and real industry needs. And I'm covering the industry needs within technology industry.
Okay, now that's going to be okay. Now I think we hit on the unique selling point, so to say. So that would be then the third part. Well, we'll get to that, I guess, in our discussion.
Framing is for me. I didn't call it USP on my website, but that's exactly it.
Well, yeah, but it's, I mean, if I were to look at, other websites, I would say that, design and teaching are 2 points that I can probably find with other providers. But you do have that third point, and that's, like you said, bridging the gap between, I guess, university and, real life work, so to say. But you described a different, what did you say again exactly? I described the third pillar.
Yeah, skills to jobs. That's kind of easy to remember.
Yeah,
skills for jobs, skills to jobs. It's like, we write skills and then we just the figure 2. And
yeah, I think I'm gonna have to take a class with you because I think that would be a lot of fun because you're gonna hit all those nice little things, and I'll probably remember it. Skills to jobs. That just sounds cool. And I think it's also a topic that I believe is needed. So we'll get into that in a couple. So you've just started now, and you've already mentioned that you have a couple Microsoft as one of your customers. Do you have any other customers that you really enjoy or that you see a lot of potential with? Okay, that I don't know if that was a good question. Okay, but Microsoft is a company that everybody knows. So, do you have any other companies where you think that it'll be really, not to put the other business that you're working with, but do you have another one that you say, okay, this is going to be one where I think I can put a lot of my ideas into, or project maybe?
Yeah, Microsoft I'm a Microsoft partner, so I wish Microsoft to come now as my customer. So that's my next goal.
Okay.
It's a big goal, right?
Mm-hmm.
For customers, the existing ones, I've started in January, but I'm just hit 5 months of full-time operations. So just 5 months of working on it. It's not easy, it's not easy to do business development, user acquisition, simply because I didn't follow one model. For the skills to jobs or career accelerators, I did 2 programs, but they're B2C, business to consumer model, meaning that it's much tougher market, because when you're a young company and you're less known and you come as a new entrant and offer something that does not exist yet in Singapore, for example, in the form that I'm offering. It's a concept that exists, but in the form that I'm offering doesn't, and it takes double or triple or 10 times more work just to build this business model as a B2C. But this is very interesting because, as you say, actually skills, I can't teach skills if I'm not acquiring new skills myself. So I'm throwing myself in this environment where every single day I have to do something, whether I choose it or not, that pushes me out of my comfort zone, because I need to understand marketing and I'm not a marketer. I need to understand how the B2C model works, and I've never done B2C model. I've only worked on the B2B sales and partnerships and contracts before. So who are my customers? My customers are higher education institutions. I can say there are 3 universities in Kazakhstan, very different, very, very different, starting from Civil Aviation Academy to a regional university, to a medical university that are very interested in what I'm doing. So I'm teaching actually faculty of these universities, right? So not the students, right? Which is interesting and much more challenging.
That's even better though, because I mean you're teaching those people that will influence others. So I mean it's you're teaching. Sorry, I like I said, I'm old school, so I only have old nomenclature here. What was it? Teach the teacher or something like that, or teach the Um,
Train the trainer.
yeah, sorry, thank you. There you go. See, train the trainer. That's what I was looking for. Train the trainer. Yeah. So
Yeah.
that's what. But that I mean that leverages your knowledge though, because you're instilling it right at the correct spot. Because what you teach those individuals will, as a multiplier. So because they will take your knowledge and then basically hand it down to those students and so forth. So another thing that in our pre-talk that we had talked about, you also have a mentorship. You said is also a big part of what you do. Where does that fit into your construct? Because mentorship for me then would be something um, that would be somewhat outside of the three topics you mentioned, but you said it was still critical to your business as such.
Yeah, indeed. Um, I didn't include it as a separate pillar, but in fact, it's part of my Break into Tech programs. So the newest one, the second one out of the Skills to Jobs, the Break into Tech, it's called Break into Tech, Reinventing Your Career with AI. That's the full name, right? Just
Wow, you're just
everybody not to be
all the
confused.
terms here. Listen, I think I have to
All the
have a
buzzwords.
piece of paper here and start writing these things down. Okay. Breaking the tech. Okay. At this rate, I'm going to sign up for whatever you have. I don't know yet. Let's see. Okay.
Please come. In fact, I'm gonna create a program for mid careers because
Okay.
my second one, the one I'm talking about, starting in January, is I had a very kind of a strict audience or user personas to focus on your students and early careers
Uh-huh.
to achieve certain metrics. But I am really, really willing to do another program specifically for career pivoters, right? For mid career people who want to work in technology or just want to try out what it is. And
Okay.
mentorship is, in fact, I included mentorship in addition to the training, mentorship, and career accelerator, because I frankly believe that it's impossible to train and learn and work without having a mentorship.
Mm-hmm.
Having said that, I've never had a mentor, like until recently, maybe until 5 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And I've never knew I needed to have a mentor when I was, let's say, 20 years old, 25 years old.
Mm-hmm.
I, I thought like it's good to have, but I never thought like it's, it's necessary for your growth. I was comfortable just doing what I'm doing. But then I've always had people who would advise me or help me
Mm-hmm.
when I asked them. And that was not a formal mentorship, but it was a very comfortable, um, you know, um, very comfortable part of my professional and personal growth.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's so important. Like I see a lot of young people that literally Friday night we were talking with some students in Singapore and they were telling me that they're afraid to make that first step, right? To ask, especially if the person doesn't know them, how they would make that first step for mentorship. And I said, wow, that's interesting. I never thought about it because I just asked.
Well, I mean, I think it would be interesting. I can't. I wouldn't say I had. Through my career, I didn't have a mentor either. Mostly, I would say it was just somebody was responsible for you, but not really a mentor in that sense. And now, what I think is interesting in your approach there, that you're actually saying that you have somebody that you approach a mentor, so you're actually being active, where I mostly know it as a passive thing. So somebody is assigned to you, and then this is your mentor, type thing. But actively going out to find a mentor is a completely new thing for me. So how does that work? I mean, is that the challenge, or where do you see it? I mean, do you see it more as, is it responsibility of the individual to say, to look for a mentor, or is that a company responsibility that you think that more companies should engage in mentorship?
Absolutely, confirming what you just said. But unfortunately, not all companies recognize yet the importance of mentorship. Second, not all companies are trained to do the matchmaking, right? It's such a crucial thing to get the right people matched to each other, not because there might be a wrong mentor and the wrong mentee, not in that sense, but to really help a person, a mentee, to grow, I believe it's crucial to understand who is the mentor, who is the mentee, what is the beautiful outcome that can come out for both, right? And usually people say, oh, it's just for mentee, or either they're finding a job, or I don't know, breaking into a new industry like technology doing. But it's always a dialogue. Mentor is learning equally, or if not more, because most of the times it's different generations, or could be even the same generations. And I think what's important here, it's a safe space.
Okay.
Because a mentor could be your boss. But can we really frankly say that all bosses in the world, in all companies, could be the best mentors? I mean, I was lucky.
Well, let's take it back one step before. I mean,
Yeah.
to the understanding of mentor. Maybe that's. Do you think that maybe there's when we look at it from a company perspective, I would probably say the mentorship is probably more of a title than it is actually a concept behind it. So I would say, like I said, sometimes we use terms very interchangeably. They become everyday usage terms, but sometimes we lose the meaning behind the actual word. So in the case of mentorship, my belief is maybe that people don't actually know what the tasks are behind that. So mentorship, to maybe understanding in our company or other companies, is just that you have somebody available that helps you through transition into the company, that helps you with any topics you have. So kind of like a supervisor, just with the title of mentor. For you, how does that? So it's not just a supervisor, rather a mentor is, I would say, the way you explain it, or the way I have a feeling that direction you're going, would be something other than just a simple supervisor. So how could you explain that a little bit? What the mentorship means for you, and how you would like to see it applied?
I think what you said, a mentor as a supervisor, is already very good, as a good starting point, right? Because again, not all companies yet have it as a formal mentorship, as a structure in the workplace. This is a very good starting point. But in fact, you might need to have a mentor before you start working.
Okay.
The things are changing. Maybe you want to have it in school. Maybe you're preparing for a hackathon and you don't know how to do it, or you want to ask somebody who is in this industry and you're writing an essay on that topic. Like there is no boundaries, in fact, of when do you want to look for mentor. In my understanding, I was asking for help. Okay, it's very, maybe it's a bit weird, right? But it's just me. I didn't have like qualifying criteria. Oh, it has to be a CEO, or it has to be this company, it has to be this industry. So it's a very quantitative. Mine was very qualitative, right? And I just feel that I want to learn from this person. And it was a very strong thing. Sometimes I couldn't explain, I couldn't put it into words and quantify it and put the metrics why I want to learn. Not necessarily mentored. I want to learn from that person. So usually, and this is a very recent thing as well, I can watch somebody speaking at the stage, or I don't know, at my event, company event, or somewhere industry, sometimes even online. And I feel like, wow, what this person is saying is kind of changing my mindset. I think about this problem from a totally different way, or I used to disagree on that, and now I can look at a different angle, right? So it's shaping my thinking. And it's such an amazing thing, because you don't feel that very often, frankly. Especially the older you go, you have your fixed beliefs as well.
Yeah.
And this is so beautiful, because these people who could be not your mentors, but like just approaching them, it could be such a beautiful outcome. Of course, you don't know, you might be rejected, and not rejected because you're not good enough, but because the person doesn't know you and they have the right to say, oh, I'm busy, or I can't, I never done mentorship, or like, probably not this time. I have already 10 mentees out there. So many reasons, but just for me, I just come up to that person and I say, hey, I really liked what you say. I say as it is. And you totally changed my thinking about this topic, or I don't know, this problem, or about what I'm doing. And that's why I'm sitting here. And I find it so amazing. I don't mind learning more from you, either online, reading your articles or whatever. I'm happy to stay in touch if this like we are oceans away online. Um, I'm just want to say like I'm your fan, right?
Okay.
So I want to be part of your journey. Maybe not necessarily as a formal mentor-mentee relationship, but yeah, it's very inspiring. So the person who inspires me, and this is very very interesting thing because these people could come from anywhere. It could be a musician,
Mhm.
not necessarily from your workplace. It could be a professor. It could be a very young person.
Mhm.
It could be a teenager who is doing, I don't know, I'm writing an amazing app, right? Solving a real problem. And you are like, oh, so I don't see this geographical and age and all other social boundaries. Like when I want to learn from someone.
Mhm.
So that would be my definition of probably not a real definition of mentor, but a definition of uh, I can learn and be inspired.
Okay.
And my
So,
work could be also inspired by that person.
okay. So two things on that. The first one, I just recently had a talk with somebody, and they had introduced me to something that um, is new for me, but it kind of matches with the mentorship idea. At least one part of it struck a note in me, and that was when you said you wanted to be part of somebody's journey. And I just learned something new, and it's called live authoring. And I guess when you write a book, you can then in this I've never heard of it before, but I guess when you write a book, you start sharing it with a community, and then they help you create this book. They tell you, where you can maybe intensify the characters or work them out. So, and that kind of when you said, being part of a journey, that's where, and a little bit of mentoring maybe, because you, in this case, you're with a community, so the community is your mentor in that case, which I thought was an interesting series. So um, that was just like an excursus because it's taking out in a different space. But the other thing, the second part was then, so is that what you try to instill on the individuals when you say mentorship is to be open to that, to look for these experiences, to make it part of your learning journey, so to say?
Absolutely. So mentorship, the way I describe it, probably it's kind of a long term, but there could be absolutely quantifiable mentorship that is rational, that is on a needs based, right? I want to work in technology industry, but I'm currently in absolutely not connected industry. Let's say I'm a doctor, right? So I want to
Hmm.
what I'm gonna do, and you need to have a very clear guide or like checklist what you're gonna do, and I think mentor is an important part of that, right? How I'm gonna go, how I'm gonna work in, how I'm gonna first secure even an interview, not even a job, and this is what we teach in the Break into Tech my program, second program. So another difference I say also would say from many mentorship programs, which are actually quite good on the market, but we are very, very intensive. So with mentorship, I'm literally sitting with I'm myself a mentor with other mentors who are the company founders, right? Startup founders and big tech executives coming from Microsoft, AWS, and other companies. And they've been, and by the way, they're not like very, very seasoned, like CEO type. No, I
Hmm.
made sure different ages, different functions, different countries, as diverse as it could be, different
Hmm.
genders, absolutely. Um, and we see it and we think, what would be the KPI for every single meeting that we would have? How this KPI could be attached to the person I'm mentoring. So we are not taking KPI
Hmm.
from the air and like, okay, this is for everybody. Just learn the way we do. No, that's why it's a very hard job because right now I don't know who my students will be. We're
Hmm.
12 days before we close the applications. I will only know before January,
Okay.
post 30th of December. So it's my job to make sure I arrange the right KPIs for mentors and mentees. So I need to understand who are my mentors and who are my mentees and a very deep psychological level beyond professional needs. So
Okay.
I would need to sit again with my mentors when I will have the students, and for each individual to assign the KPIs, and both will be responsible. So the responsibility is shared. So mentor is not sitting just there, hey, yeah, I'm so experienced. Let me tell you what it means to work in tech. No,
Okay. Okay.
absolutely not. It's a shared responsibility. I put the metrics as 80% mentee. Yes,
Mhm.
you have to be absolutely responsible for the meeting,
Mhm.
for scheduling the meeting, for putting the agenda, for making sure you are coming and you're
Mhm.
coming prepared. And 20% co-shared responsibilities with the mentor.
Okay. Wow. Okay. That's in detail now. Okay. Um, so this leads us to then what we started off with into our conversation of future skills. So you already mentioned a little bit with your three pillars, and of course your opinion and the need for mentorship. So we have kind of like a framework to work with, but the concept of future skills, or the name, is pretty much a buzzword in the business world. So, in your from your perspective, what would you consider a clear definition of uh, the what future skills are?
Wow, that's such a big question. And again, I'm sure there is a definition. I just don't know what's the accepted. And if there is
Well,
an accepted
I
definition,
mean,
so I'll
this is
my
your
own.
vision. So, I mean, this is
Yeah.
I mean, basically, I mean, it's your playground, so we're setting out the rules. So by your definition, and I'm sure if somebody listens to the podcast and has a different opinion, they can have that and they can share that with us also. But um, I mean, you've worked out a whole plan around this topic. So so for you, what do you see as being future skills, or what is your definition of future skills?
My definition, and I'll be happy if our listeners would agree or disagree with me because I love constructive conversations. So, my definition of the future skills or future ready skills is the skills that will not disappear but will be enhanced or accelerated with the
Mhm.
development of technology.
Okay. Okay.
Looking into the
So
future, right? Yeah.
okay. And why do you see these as being so crucial in the job market now more than maybe 5 or 10 years ago?
I think we always knew that we need to learn in order to acquire a specific skill.
Mhm.
It, we didn't call it probably future skills in the past because the life was much simpler in the past.
Mhm.
Um, the technology was very different in the past, and let's say um, people used to work a lot with their hands, right? Like
Mhm.
there's a lot of the jobs that are still very important. So life was very different. I think if we look like 20, 30, 50 years ago, but 5, 10 years ago, we just did not call them future ready skills. They did exist. But somehow it happened that future ready skills became associated with the technology industry.
Okay.
And technology industry took it very seriously because
Well,
the technology
let's is then maybe is there maybe still a misunderstanding when we say future ready skills? Okay, for like a couple generations back, it might have been let's go way back. At some point, I guess using the typewriter might have been a future ready skill because you're assuming
yeah.
um, that typewriter is the newest invention. Then we moved up along the food chain. Now we're computers. So a future ready skill might have been the use of computers. Now computers are, in everybody's hand, in everybody's pocket. Um, and now we have AI. So um, I'm just putting that out there. That's the only thing that came to mind. So is future, and then now depending on what industry you're talking about, future ready skills might be something different for an individual. So how does where you see that? I mean, is there a general misunderstanding of what a future ready skill is compared to maybe or a misunderstanding that it might be called a technical skill where it's future ready skill, or is a future ready skill the same for every industry. Is that possible even?
Yeah, I would agree that future ready skills could be the same for every industry, is that the industry would choose
Mm-hmm.
which things are more important for them and which ones they will prioritize and invest in.
Mm-hmm.
The thing is, okay, this is such a interesting and complex term at the same time, because I would say most of the future ready skills are the things that machines cannot do, although we tend to focus so much on technical digital hard skills, right? Um, it's much, much harder to learn, train, and acquire human-centric skills.
Mm-hmm.
Some people say you're born with that. No, absolutely, you can train it, but it's hard work, and you have to be in a certain environment to acquire the skills. And also, the part of, I think, misunderstanding with future-ready skills comes that it's only hard skills or technical skills, right? And then the whole concept around digital transformation and innovation is
Mm-hmm.
something very difficult, complex, only for certain people, only for advanced industries. It's a very expensive thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
And this is like a, I don't know, certain attribute to this term, connected to that term.
Mm-hmm.
And it's absolutely not true, because whether you want it or not, you're undergoing digital transformation. If you're not
Okay.
undergoing digital transformation, how are you using computer? How are you using the chat GPT or Bing chat, the
Mm-hmm.
Copilot, now it's called Copilot prompts? Like you are not sitting outside when the whole world is already moving with the digital transformation.
Mm-hmm.
And innovation is something that is not necessarily digital. And
Okay.
this is a huge importance to train the skills that will lead to innovation. And it's not necessarily expensive thing to do. And it's not at the high level of the hierarchy or pyramid of needs, right? It's it's an essential thing for the company to survive nowadays, to be innovative. So if you ask me, is cybersecurity future ready skill? Absolutely, because there are new jobs appearing in that industry, and we have more jobs than the qualified talents
Mm-hmm.
um, who would take these jobs, right? So there is a mismatch
Mm-hmm.
between supply and demand on the job market. If you ask me, is empathy, creativity, and curiosity, which are interconnected,
Mm-hmm.
is a future ready skill because we always had it since the existence of humankind? Absolutely.
Okay,
Because
now
you
we're
can
getting into okay. Now it's getting interesting. Okay, so this would once again fall for me in the category of, like I said, in my Stone Age thinking, it would be a soft skill. but
yeah.
um, but okay, let's focus on that. So what about, you've mostly worked, however, in Asia and Central Asia and so forth. Do you see that as, to be quite honest, before talking to you, I haven't really talked to anybody about future ready skills and to have them applied the way you've applied them. So do you think that's, and do you think that's unique to the Asian market, or have you had experiences, or since you've exchanged so much, with mentors and so forth, do you see the same development in the European or even American markets? Because sometimes various regions are more receptive to certain things than other regions are, or are the early adopters or quicker adopters of things. Do you see that as being um, in any way an influence?
I think Asia is very dynamic region, like very fast developing region. So a lot of innovations, especially in AI and generative AI, is happening here.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I would say, if we talk about skills,
Mm-hmm.
it's everywhere, just at a different pace. As long
Okay.
as you have, you know, you have access to learning, and it could be anywhere, either through your mobile phone, in the classroom, in the park, in the museum, doesn't matter, in the field.
Mm-hmm.
You can learn anywhere. So the skills will be happening no matter what. But there is also an inequality, right? An inequality that when we speak of who is acquiring skills faster and who's getting the jobs, and
Mm-hmm.
who's lagging behind. So the digital divide is still there if we talk about hard skills, digital skills. Um, but I like this thing. I even wrote it down. Last night I was listening to this super popular. I don't listen to all the podcasts, but I love that.
You know what? I'm wondering where you find all the time to do all your stuff. It's like, I mean, Lance, I've been talking to you. 20. Do you sleep? I mean,
Yeah, I have to sleep. But yeah, so it's Lex Friedman and Jeff Bezos. It's a very new podcast, I think, from a few days ago. And then Jeff Bezos says that IQ, I think, as I remember, IQ is not a single dimensional. You know, there are so many ways to be smart. And it really stuck with me because you can't just say, oh, this person has the skill, or this is smart, and this person does not have the skill, that therefore he or she is not smart. So, and that's how we're gonna put them into a better university, give them better job, or give them promotion or not. This is such a narrow view of the world. Because we need opportunity to everybody to be smart, right?
Well, I think
everybody has the same tools to get smart, right? And the end definition is not to get smart, but to acquire a skill that they can showcase, right? Okay. So that changes the whole definition of assessment, school assessment, interviews assessment, job promotion assessment, performance review assessment. The way we look at people, the way we think, whether we have some bias, smart versus not smart, you know, high potential, low potential, fast learner, slow learner, whatever, you know, the dichotomies we might have. So Asia versus the world, I would not really say Asia would adopt future skills faster, but I would just say Asia is very hungry.
Okay.
Region, that fast developing region, so they would be very hungry. And if I speak about the young people that I train and teach in my programs and mentor, so Gen Zs, right? Gen Zs are the same everywhere.
Okay.
Literally, you take any country, their thinking will be similar.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So let's you had, I think, the most. Well, not the best, but one of the things that I thought was very interesting in your explanation was, again, and I think that's what I'd like to focus on, was the idea of I forget how you mentioned it, job ready, or basically I'd like to focus on the transition from university to job. You had what was the term that you used for that?
Skills to jobs.
Skills to jobs, exactly. Can you go a little bit more in depth on that? Because I think that's a really interesting topic, especially since we also mentioned Gen Zs and so forth. So can you go on? Can you explain the skills to jobs a little bit more?
Yeah. For example, I'll give my own example. Probably that's easiest. This was hard for me. I was mid-career when I wanted to transition to technology. And I had zero experience in technology. I could put nothing on my CV related to technology industry. I had zero network, literally zero. If I would look at my LinkedIn a little bit less than 3 years ago, I couldn't find a single person who works in big tech and I could ask advice or who could refer me, right? I had zero experience with tech interviews because they're quite different from other interviews and they're quite tough. This is the best job, the most competitive industry to get in, right? So I was stuck with how can I go with my existing skills into unknown, right? And then I talked to some HR companies and they said, no, you cannot go, literally, because you should stay where you are because you can be promoted where you are instead of throwing everything you've acquired in your career and starting from scratch in a new industry where nobody knows you. And I said, no, please help me because I need to get at least.
You want to transition?
Okay. Yeah, I want to transition. I want to pivot from the social impact, whatever you call it, education. Was my previous job before tech, and they were like, no. And then I was thinking, interesting, because I thought we should be very open-minded because it's where different people come. You place people into internships, junior, young people, or those who want to start from new beginnings, and then seasoned people, and then people who are about to retire but still want to work, women returning from maternity leaves, all different life situations, right? And I thought, maybe this is a very risk-averse industry. right?
Mhm.
3 years ago. So I was like quite surprised because I thought I would have a very different outcome. And then since I had zero network, I just asked my friend who who I said, please, do you have anybody? Literally asked a few close friends. And he told me like, oh, I have my boxing buddy, he works in AWS, like I can intro you. And that was such a beautiful thing because I applied to AWS twice, like a
Mhm.
month ago before that, and I didn't hear anything. And I didn't even know I need to have a referral, so it gives me better chance. So I was referred like, and I got 24 hours. I was shortlisted by HR, and I passed all the interviews. And it was so important to understand how real industry works instead of hearing
Mhm.
and watching YouTube and on all other social media how other people are saying what's inside.
Mhm.
You have to be in. And I truly believe, and I also teach it in my programs, that you better try and fail than sit there being scared to go out of your comfort zone and thinking how it is there, And I don't
Okay.
mind being failing every time just to get what I want, because
Mhm.
what is a failure, right? Failure is your learning point, and you're
Mhm.
one step closer each time to your goal, however
Yep.
you find your goal. So to me, it was, it's possible. And then when I went to my tech interviews, my first interviews was with AWS. It was a global role, a regional role, but there was like global interviews, and
Mhm.
nobody asked me. I said, please tell us what you did in your CV connects to your job, like the usual interview questions. Where do you see yourself in 5 years? Why are you better than the other candidates? Like, this is very subjective question, I think.
Mhm.
Um, and and nobody asked me, oh, why you come to technology? You have zero experience. Nobody even bothered with that. And then
Wow.
I said, wow, something must be very interesting happening here
Mhm.
than outside in my world that I don't know about.
Mhm.
So I became very curious that people look at where you stand and where you could go in the future. So I really love this concept that you're not judged for your past. You are not judged that you were in a different industry doing different things, maybe drawing different salary, um, much lower, I don't know. You don't have to be a perfect person to tick all the boxes just to be
Mhm.
given access. So this is so beautiful. This is where equality is. We're equalizing the access for everybody because we want diverse talents in the industry. And then the closest probably example to me outside of the industry would be in Singapore government, there is a concept of CEP, current estimated potential. So
Oh,
well,
wow. Okay.
not only on the job, but on the pathway of a person, right?
Mhm.
So there is um, we could predict based on the competencies at the junior, mid-level, and senior levels,
Mhm.
where how this person could grow in this role and other roles as a
Mhm.
civil public servant. And I think this is much more important than looking at the past. We're
Okay.
looking at current potential, and where you go, your future potential.
Okay. Interesting. Interesting. So,
Yeah.
um, where would you see the greater challenge in either identifying or getting the future skills? Do you see it more with the organizations in how they, in what the organization may or the companies may identify as future skills, or do you see it more as a topic with the individual to um, access those skills? Because I would say, for organizations, how do they address the existing skill gaps through training and development? So, well, now I'm getting really, yeah. Let's start off with the first part. What would you say? Where's the where's the more work in understanding future skills needed? Is it on the side of the organizations, the companies, or in maybe communicating those future skills to individuals, or is it more the individual realizing there's a gap and accessing like a program such as yours to close that gap?
Wow, this is a very interesting question, and I love the way you framed it. So I would think that it's companies' responsibilities before they create a job description and put it
Mhm.
out. there to identify, and not by HR and the hiring manager, but actually company-wide, to identify what are the core skills they need before they frame them into jobs, positions, roles. So once they identify the core skills, they need to create career pathways. So we don't look into the jobs as a standalone definition now, because it's quite limiting. So the person could change so many jobs and companies and industries in his or her lifetime. And careers could be linear, non-linear. Some people want to grow very, very upwards, right? Vertical. Some want horizontal. They want to acquire all the skills from the different fields in the same company, or go into different companies. Some people love to grow, but they don't want to manage people, right? They want to be individual contributors, and they should not be penalized for that if they want to grow. But it's like, okay, you have to manage a team, or now you step further, okay, 10 more people. so it's all evolving process. And then employees should have a say, of course. And why I'm saying this, the core will be with the companies. It's like an umbrella, right? You set up what is important. And this would reduce so much uncertainty and anxiety from employees who don't need to figure out, will I get my bonus this year? What will happen to me if I'm not getting this training? What kind of training I need to get? It's like, okay, I'm getting this training because it's needed by my company, or I also need it as a person because it will become transferable skill I can use anywhere. Or they would say, why do I need to go to how do you call it, this performance reviews, and then everything I'm preparing for the year, I've done for the year, only will be discussed during performance reviews because the world changes so fast. You can't say, oh, I've done it 6 months ago, it was so amazing, because it might be irrelevant already. So this assessment has to be very comfortable. It has to be constant. We call it one-on-ones. A lot of companies do that. Do they really matter? Are they really one-on-ones where you're not reporting one-sided to your boss what you're doing, and it's like, but you're really incorporating what you are doing, what are the challenges, opportunities, and where your areas of growth. So this is, again, shared responsibility, but I would put more weight to the employer's side, simply because they have this power and resources, right, to create the pathways, to define the structure. But you have to be proactive as an employee, of course. If you don't know where you want to grow, but you want to acquire certain skills, you shouldn't sit there and say, okay, next year I will ask about it when the financial situation is better.
Okay. So, wow, I think we've only touched on everything now. We haven't really been able to, and we've already, the podcast now at an hour. So I think there's just so much more to share. But yeah, we could talk for 2 hours, and I'm getting education. So I believe that for most of our listeners, they're also getting a little education on the topic of future skills. And in conclusion, so would you have any, let's see, how do I best put this? So what would be your key takeaways for our podcast listeners that will help them with their daily lives, or specifically in view of future skills with that lens?
I would say what works for me, like, it's such like a bits of wisdom, right? To part with. What works for me, and I think I'm still working on it, because it's a hard skill to get: active listening. We all think that we listen and then we respond, right? But it's so hard to really understand what's being said, not just to listen to the words, but the context and maybe the fears and emotions and certain constraints the person is meaning, but probably not saying directly. So you really need to actively listen. And this is the same for my learners. I would not call students, because the learners of different ages come and different professions. So to understand what they really need, And this is so important when we talk about inclusion, because not everybody would say that they are not comfortable. If they don't know you, how they can trust you and say, I'm not comfortable to learn this way, or I have special education needs, or it's too fast for me, or English is not my first language. So all these things, it's my job to understand it, to learn and get it out from my learners, to adjust my course. So my advice would be, when you're doing something, do it for somebody, not just for yourself. When you work in the company, let's say, a traditional example, when you accomplish a task, is it just because I want to get it done and throw it away from my to-do list? Or you're thinking, how can this contribute to my wider team? Maybe my company could perform better. Could you think a little bit wider? Because then it would really become a valuable skill, because other people might not even know what you're doing. And then you say, hey, I've done, because now you can do your job faster.
Okay.
Hey, I actually done this so we can, experiment and add this new product. We don't have to, but do you want to have a look? Because I've already done it. I think it's a good idea. So you're always thinking one step ahead, and it's not necessarily for you to be famous or recognized. It's just thinking big picture. Yes, how can I add value? I always think about that, and that helps me a lot. And probably be bold. It's very hard to...
That one's hard.
Yeah, but being bold doesn't mean like being overconfident. Being bold is being bold in your thinking. Don't have the boundaries of your imagination. And if somebody says, "Oh, you can't do it," or "You can't go into tech industry," right, because you have zero experience, as I was told, and I'll say, "Oh, thank you so much," right? And I would do my own way. It doesn't mean that my way is right. It's just I can allow myself to experiment and take risks to think that way.
Yeah, okay. I would say I'd add on to that. For me, what I've observed is if you're certain about yourself. So I guess it's an inner strength, certain about yourself, where you are, and where you want to go. And I think that acts as a beacon, which will oftentimes, like in your case, you are uncertain, on how to get there, but you're certain where you want to go, or that you want to get there. So, and that, basically you had a beacon that you were following. So I think that's good. In conclusion, two more questions. So we already answered a little bit on when we talked about who carries a little bit more responsibility for the topic of future skills. We said organizations, and then in the final question I had now, you also said the key takeaways for the podcast listeners. What would you recommend for organizations? Maybe as a final note. I know we mentioned it like 10 minutes ago, but like in conclusion, what would you recommend to organizations in terms of through the lens of future skills?
I would ask this question, in fact. What is your end goal with your learning? Of course, it's a bottom line, right? Almost every organization will tell you, we want to grow, we want to be more profitable, we want to be better recognized. Clients would come back to us, our customers. But what is your overall goal of every program, every skills that you're teaching internally in your company? And it could be unique to your company. And it's a very hard question. So in order to answer this question, senior management has to be present together with everybody else. It cannot be just the sponsorship decision and sponsorship answer, right? And why I'm asking, because, okay, how do we measure engagement? How do we know that people love their jobs? Are they happy? It's very hard to measure. We only know when people are leaving, right? And something happened.
Yep. And that's too late. Yes, correct.
And that's too late. And most probably they're unhappy way before they made the decision. So nobody wants to be the reason for their unhappiness. I mean, I think so. But can you design your everyday work and your interactions? In fact, I asked one HR director, actually one of my job interviews in the past, how do you know she was sharing all the amazing programs they are doing in the market, the new initiatives. How do you know that your initiatives are welcome? And
Okay.
she was a little bit stumbling, and she said, like, oh, I asked directors who are in charge of the teams to tell me and write an email because we have metrics, how to measure that. I said, no, but how do I know that the employee that I walk past in the morning and say hi, and what do they think about initiative? Are they afraid to tell me? And would they be comfortable? Is it anonymous? Would they be comfortable to tell their boss, and the boss will tell you what's really happening? Are they forced into this initiative, or they want to be part of this initiative? And this is a big question. It could be a rhetoric question. So how do you engage? Engage at the moment your employees, right? Not at the Christmas parties,
Yep.
birthdays, company milestones, but every day.
On an everyday basis. Okay.
This is exactly your bottom line. This is your company vision and mission. This is why people wake up in the morning and go there. Of course, there is a salary. That's a big version of that.
Yeah.
But in the end of the day, people need to have a meaning.
Yep.
I better stay at home with my family. Why I need to take a commute and go to work? Well, I have a salary, right?
Yeah.
Well, there has to be something, and I don't want to take the place of Adam Grant or Simon Sinek, who are huge thought leaders in this space. But in my own worldview is, as a company, are you training yourself on bias? Do you even know you could be biased? Not even to your own employees, but the newcomers. Do you hire employees, new ones, to be exactly like you, who laugh at the same jokes, or who are different, and you're a little bit uncomfortable with them because they're different, but they bring so much new? This is where innovation also happens.
Okay.
Are you open to actively listening? Right? Are you vulnerable as a company? So one important exercise, and probably I'll stop there, that I learned, not to take it into the night, that I learned, it's called, Radical Candor.
Radical candor.
There's a book, yeah.
Okay, so after this, I'm going to have to listen to this podcast myself again, right? All the terms that you got there. Okay, radical candor. That sounds, I think we could go off to another topic completely on that, but we'll go with it because I'm curious to see where this one leads. Go ahead.
And let me leave you with that, and probably that would be the topic you want to explore in your next podcast. It had a huge impact on me. Earlier this year, I worked as a facilitator on the consulting project, digital transformation consulting project, with a team of 5 fresh graduates, 2023 fresh graduates from Singapore Polytechnics. They all have special education needs. And I asked them this radical counter question in the week 1 we were together. I said, what do I need to do, or what do I need to stop doing for you to make it easier to work with me? There was such a silence because you have to be very, very vulnerable for people who don't know you well, and in fact scared of you because you come like as a role as a teacher. And I didn't want to come as somebody higher with authority, because I need to build trust, and I need to tell them that I don't know everything. I'm only here to guide you. I'm not here like top down, tell you what to do. And fast forward, let me tell you, it was such an amazing experience. They all learned so much, and in fact they told me, you were never cuddling us or protecting us like everybody else does. You were pushing us so hard, but we liked it because we were never pushed in our life.
Okay.
Professionally, because you could find that niche where we could go, and each of us could shine in our own strength. So you could discover all of the complementary skills that we would have. And on top of that, you each time would check on us every morning. How are we feeling emotionally? Right?
Okay, so that's then radical candor is to have a very open question, and so to say, to make it basic. Okay. So that means we've now we're over our podcasting time that we're supposed to, but I think it was a very, very enjoyable conversation, very interesting. Like I said, I personally will probably have to listen to this episode again to see all the things that you dropped, all the topics, all the knowledge and so forth, Assel. So thank you very much. You also already then basically answered the final question that I would have had, and that would have been, who do you recommend as the next podcast guest, or what topic do you recommend? Now, I have no clue where I'm going to find somebody on the topic of radical candor. The first thing that came to mind is a comedian, but that would probably not be the appropriate choice. So I'll have to.
I think you never know is a good choice.
I'll have to do some looking, or possibly re-invite you to another podcast called Radical Candor. Boy, I really like that term. Of everything that stuck with me, I think that's going to be the one that stuck the most. So thank you very much for being available and being in this podcast and providing us with some insights of future skills. And anybody who wants to reach out to Assel, they can do that by basically going to your internet site, which I think I have it right, edutechfuture.com, correct?
Right.
So you can reach out to Assel and find out more about her company and more about her vision and mission. And I think one of the things that we can all agree upon, Assel, is that you have displayed a huge amount of heartfelt interest. Now I got confused because I was using a German topic. In German, we say Herzblut, and that is when you live and breathe a topic. And I think we all recognize that you really live and breathe this topic. So from my part, I wish you the utmost success. It was very enjoyable. And if I had the opportunity, I'd probably find myself booking a course with you just to see what it's like, because I think that would be a really, really interesting experience. So thank you again very much for that. And with that, that's the end of our podcast. So as always, if you liked our podcast, please smash the like button, or even better, subscribe. Thanks for listening. And till next time, this was The Learning Curve with Kenny. Thank you, Assel.
Thanks, Ken. It was my pleasure. Thanks so much.
This podcast is released once a month and presented to you by IMC Learning. I'm your host, Kenneth Littlepage. Editorial planning and script by Simon Breslaw and Vanessa Claes. Post-production and design, Lars Knuck.